Hello everyone, I am Mary Rose Davila, and tonight we will tackle about fiction analysis, criticism, and evaluation. And along with me, before I forgot, are Ms. Mary Therese Albaran, who will report about fiction criticism, and Mary Joy Masong, who will going to report about fiction evaluation. Now, without further ado, let us go through our learning objectives. Now, of course, we have targeted the three domains that are very important in our learning objectives. Now, first one is the cognitive part. Identify what to include in analyzing fiction. And in affective domain is to demonstrate fiction criticism by critiquing literary work. And in the psychomotor domain is to achieve understanding on the fiction evaluation process. Now, before we begin, I would like to say that I hope the presentation is vivid in your end. Now, these are, without further ado, we're going to go through our main discussion for tonight, which is about fiction analysis. And the fiction analysis has to go through process. And what you see in your screens, I think the 9 things that we have to know in order to analyze fiction. First one is plot, second is setting, characterization, point of view, imagery, symbolism, figurative language, tone, irony, and theme. And I know that you are all familiar and have prior knowledge about these fiction analysis process, because we have already tackled this, and we have already also done fiction analyzation in our subject under Mrs. Sarakanlao. Now, for the first one, of course, we have plot, and in the plot, we have five elements. First one is the introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and ending. Now, what does the conflict have something to do with the plot? Of course, every plot, every story, or every literary work has conflicts, and the types of conflict that we have are person versus self, person versus person, person versus nature, person versus society, and the likes. Now, it is important to analyze first the plot in order for us to know what is the purpose of the story. What does the plot tells? What does the story tells according to its plot, according to its element? Now, we have to ask ourselves, what does a scene, or does this one scene connects to the other? Or is it chronological? Or is it, or does the introduction connects to its rising action, and does the rising action connects to its climax, and does the climax falls under, does the climax have something to do with the falling action? Now, what did happen in the story or in the literary work that we are analyzing that made the falling action happen, and how did the story end? Now, it is how we analyze the plot. Now, again, the part of analyzing the plot is analyzing also the conflict of the story in order for us to determine what does these characters, or what does the the story tells about himself, or what does the event in the story that is relevant to the characteristics of our characters in the literary work. Now, next is we have the setting. Of course, we are familiar with the setting. Now, first, there are four things that we have to identify. First one is the place, time, social environment, and physical environment. Now, let us dig in further with these four settings. Before that, setting is a location of a story or novel in terms of place, time, social environment, and physical environment. Now, in the setting, we will know where did it happen, where did the story happen, and when did the story happen, and what does or what factors or aspects that influenced the social environment and physical environment of the story. Now, for the first one, the place, the geographical location of the story. A country or a city, a large city or a small village, indoors or outdoors, or both. Now, for example, in the novel Harry Potter. Now, we are all familiar with Harry Potter. Now, there are many places that the Harry Potter movie or fiction happened or takes place, and its first is, of course, the Hogwarts and the place of or the house of the uncle and the auntie of Harry Potter. Now, that is the place that's we need to determine where the story takes place, because all of these information has something to do with the story or with the storyline. Now, for the time, when did it happen? The period in history, the season of the year, the day of the month, or the hour of the day in which the events of the story occur. Now, this is what I'm talking about. It talks about, we have to identify the time, because, for example, if it happens, for example, a Filipino fiction happens before the colonization of the Spaniards, for example, specifically before 1500s, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So, we have to expect this specific story has something to do with the Japanese and the Chinese, because before the colonization of the Spaniards, this is a quick fact. The Japanese and the Chinese took place or took influence in our journey in the time before the colonization of the Spaniards. Now, I hope you understand what I am talking about. Now, simply, I just meant that the time is relevant also. The year is relevant as well in a story, because we would through this we would be able to determine what are the background or what influences this story, or what specific events in the history or during that time that, for instance, the story takes place or took happen. What is its background, or what is the author's purpose of this story? Just like, for example, the literary works of Jose Rizal. He made literary works like novels, specifically novels. He wrote those with the purpose of awakening people's mind that was brainwashed by the by the Spaniards. Now, yeah, medyo malayo na ako, no? Pero that's the purpose of it na we have to analyze when did the story happen, because all of this information, just like what I've said earlier in the place element, na all of this information has something to do with the storyline or with the story's purpose. Now, for the social environment, the location of characters and events in a particular society and or a particular social class, lower class, middle class, and upper class. Now, in the social environment, what is we have? I mean, we have to identify or analyze um, the factors that are affecting the the storyline and the characteristics, because of course characters have different characteristics, right? And people as well. We can also relate that in real life. Now we have different characteristics that are influenced by our status in the society, whether if we are poor. I mean, there are people who are poor in mind and are also now member of the lower class. Now, however, there are also rich in mind that are poor, and there are also middle class that are poor in mindset, but are there are also upper class people who are poor in mindset. I mean, those are the factors. We have to dig into those factors in order for us to determine how I mean, who or what influenced this specific character and this specific story or fiction that we are trying to analyze. Now, another is physical environment. The details of the location in which the story takes place. These physical details often indicate the emotional state of the characters or the relationship between characters. Now, of course, we don't just when we are reading a fiction or a story, we are really imagining um, the location, or what does the location looks like. For example, if you say Hogwarts is the place, now what is what Hogwarts looks like? Now it is a place where it has an illusion, an illusion, I don't know, scene. Basta. So, those are the physical environment are the details that we have to look up to when we are trying to um, do fiction analysis. No. The physical details that indicates the emotional state of the characters. Like, for example, of course, it's just not the place, but also the characters that we are talking about in the setting. Setting does not only talk about places, so that's what you have to take in mind, or put in mind, that settings are not just about the places where the story happens, but as well as the characters, because again all of these has huge influence and significance in the characteristics and the storylines events. Now, let's move on. I hope you understood what I'm talking about here, and I am so sorry that I don't have enough light. Now, I think this is a third one, the characterization. People's outward appearance and behavior, and also their inner emotional, intellectual, and moral qualities. Now, of course, in analyzing a fiction, fiction has, every story has characters, and we have to identify those characters, if you know what I mean. We have to identify the characters in order for us to effectively analyze why do they act like this. Like, for example, if in a story that a man has really an anger issues, now we have to dig in further and deeper. How did this man attain or possess this kind of behavior and this kind of issue in himself? What are the factors, the emotional, intellectual, social as well, and the environmental factors that affected his behavior in the story? So that's it. Actually, we have done characterization in our other subjects in during our second year. We have to identify here the we have to characterize what is the behavior of this specific character. Now, in the fictions, in these stories, there are two main characters that we are going to focus on. There is a protagonist and antagonist. Now, these antagonists and protagonists have specific characteristics that we have also to look upon, because there are stories behind their stories. In every characteristic or in every bad behavior of a specific person, there is a story behind that. So we have to look up on that in analyzing a story, because it will greatly and significantly make our fiction analysis more effective and reliable. Now, my cat is looking at me. Now, for the, I think, fourth one is the point of view. Now, the perspective from which a story is told. Now, we are really familiar with the point of view, whether the author uses first person or whether the author uses a third person point of view. Now, in the first person point of view of we will also determine this with the use of those pronouns that the story uses, or the author uses rather. For example, if it uses I, of course that is a first person point of view. Now, if the story uses the point of view or the pronouns they, of course that is a third person point of view. Now, why is it important to determine the point of view? Of course, for us to know who is talking in the story, who is conveying a message to the readers, who is trying to tell us the story. Now, we have to determine that. For example, in a story, now I don't really have in mind a specific story. Now, we'll just assume that there is this guy in the story that has a characteristic of a psychopath. Now, this psychopath is the one. Now, while we analyze the story, this psychopath is the one that is trying to convey, trying to share and employ the message and his story. Now, that's what happens in a biographical type of fiction. That is not a fiction, but it's somewhat just like that, because you already know what fiction and non-fiction is. So we also have to note in a point of view that the narrator is not the author. The author is the one who makes the story. However, the narrator is not. The author is not the narrator of the story. It is not his point of view unless it is his own story. Okay, kasi we oftenly make a mistake in that one. Just like, for example, when someone asks, what is the point of view or who is talking in the story? We would say, oh, it's the author. No, it's not. It is someone in the story, inside the story, not outside the story, not the author. Now we have to clear up on that one. Okay, next is the imagery. Now, imagery is a collection of images in a work of fiction. These images are created through words that appeal to the reader's five senses. Yeah. For example, when in the story it's written, there is a written words such like pink flower. Excuse me. Now, pink flower. When I read that one, pink flower, I do not imagine a literally pink flower. I don't imagine what you are seeing in your screen right now. That pink flower. That is not what I am imagining. Pink flower for me is springtime, holiday, and holiday memory. Okay, now for another example, the white, color white. Now, color white indicates purity. What else? Heaven. So that's an example of an imagery. Words that makes us imagine things that is far from what it literally means. Just like color white. Color white is a color. However, when we try to analyze or read novels, stories, and etc., we do not imagine white or color white. We see purity, heaven, or a flower that is white, a peace, because in imagery we imagine those words, those what symbolizes those words. Now I hope that is understood. Now next, symbolism. Now, symbolism is an image of an event or a physical object, a thing, a person, or place that is used to represent something non-physical, such as an idea, a value, or an emotion. Now, this symbolism is really familiar to us because we have been tackling this for a very, very long time, and I think I do not have to reiterate and discuss this again because I know that you all have prior knowledge in this one. It's very understandable. It's an image of an event or physical object, a thing or a person or a place. So that is representing non-physical idea, value, and emotion. Okay. Now is a figurative language. Now we have here, we have different and various or numerous figurative languages. However, I have chosen five figurative languages, specifically the metaphor, simile, hyperbole, personification, and onomatopoeia. Okay, now for the first one, metaphor. I know you have prior knowledge with this one, so I will not further discuss it. However, okay, let's go. Okay, for metaphor, for example, in this sentence, your love is a hurricane. Okay, now you have to observe. Okay, let's move forward to the simile. Your love is like a hurricane. Now you have to observe what words used in. What word used in these sentences. Just like in a simile, you have to use as and like to describe, to describe the similarity or the similar characteristics of a specific object to another specific object. Okay, now in the metaphor, it doesn't uses like or as words. So next is hyperbole. I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. Now we cannot eat a horse. Of course, that is hyperbole exaggerates something that we normally do. Just like eating a horse when you're hungry. That is not a normal person can do. Okay, personification is, for example, the sun smiled down on us. Now, the sun scientifically, the sun has no face. Okay, it doesn't smile on us. Okay, so that in this sentence, the sun, the sentence personifies the sun as smiling down on us or down on people. Okay, now on onomatopoeia, the books fell on the table with a loud thud. Now the what makes this onomatopoeia? It's the word thud. Thud is a sound word. Okay, so though an onomatopoeia, those are the words that are sounds. However, we are using these words to describe what it sounds like, okay, or what happens. So why are these figurative languages or are relevant in analyzing fiction? Of course, to make our analyzation easy peasy. Okay, it helps us determine easily, grasp easily what are those happenings in the story or the events in the story. It helps us open our own perspective of the events in the story. It makes us understand better the story. Okay, next is the tone. It is the author's attitude or position toward the action, characters, narrator, subject, and even readers of the story. And reader must examine the language of the author uses and decide what effects of the author's choice of words has. Of course. So tone is the author's attitude in the story. Now, we have to determine what are the specific words. We have to be vigilant of the wordings that the author uses in a specific literary work, because occasionally those symbolizes or reflects what the story feels about the story or while writing this story. Okay. Now, in the irony, it refers to the unexpected difference or lack of agreement between appearance and truth, or between expectation and reality. Apparent when an author uses language to create a deliberate, contrast between appearance, what seems to be true, and truth, what is true, or between expectation, what was hoped for, and reality, what actually happens. Now there are different types of irony: the situational irony, the verbal irony, and the dramatic irony. Now, simply irony are those events that makes a turn in the story. Those events that we did not expect, or we have to determine, did something happen in the story that we did not expect. We expect nothing that it will happen, or did one character do something in the story that is far from what his personality is. So that is an irony, for example. Those are the things that we expect, however it is not really what happens in reality. Okay, so the theme: this is the truth that a story reveals, and it rarely directly stated by the author. It deals with general areas of human experience. Now, this theme is the message of the story, the overall purpose of this story. What does it teach? We have to know that in analyzing fiction. What truth does it reveal? What lessons or morals does it teach us? And these themes are not stated by the author, because we have to look for it, we have to realize and discover the latter. Now, it deals with general areas of human experiences. Now, of course, in determining the theme of a fiction, we have to look up to what happens in the story that happens in reality, that we can say, this changes my perspective, or this affected something in me. That is why I know this is the theme or the purpose and the message of the story. Okay, I hope my topic was understood. No, okay, thank you very much for listening, and good night, everybody. Mwah.